in school, it can get a little boring, especially when it's a subject you don't care too much about. But I'm here to tell you some parts of history that might have been a little too disturbing to mention in textbooks. Hi, my name is Jessa, and please join me as we look together at the top 10 disturbing moments in history not told in textbooks. Also be sure to stick around to the end, as I've got a little fun riddle for the audience. Number 10. Mr. Cromwell and the No Good, Terrible, Bad Christmas. I know it's still a little early to talk about Christmas, but I can't help it. I love the holidays. Plus, mainly my birthday's around the same time. But anyways, I digress. Christmas, however, in England for about 20 years was actually banned. Apparently in the 1600s, between 1644 and 1660, Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell, who at the time was considered an unelect prime minister, banned the celebration of the holiday season. His reasoning was due to the fact that he was a traditional and very strict Christian, a Puritan, who believed that the activities like dancing, music, and makeup were considered sinful. To Puritans, they believed that any act would deviate from God should be banned and punishable by all means. Of course, this decision didn't last very long as it caused such an uproar, people caused riots. The English didn't like it, but as for the Scottish, they didn't seem to care too much considering Christmas wasn't much of a celebration till 1958, just a few hundred years later. That's all. Number 9. Do you get deja vu? I know there's a term for this, when something happens in the past and it repeats. Is it deja vu, a coincidence? Oh, a reoccurrence. But in this case, this didn't happen yet. So I'll say it's a premonition, a really weird coincidental premonition. When the Titanic sank, it marked a huge impact throughout the world and through time. The claimed unsinkable giant fell to the bottom of the ocean and claimed the lives of over 1,496 patrons of all social classes. Researchers found the cause due to the temperatures lowering and freezing causes the sea's surface to reflect like glass. Because of this, spotting the iceberg was difficult, and therefore causing the Titanic to collide. The thing is, we know much about this part of history, but the scary part is that there was a book called Futility, a book that seemingly and strangely foresaw the disaster. Released in 1898, just 14 years before the Titanic demise, the writer Morgan Robinson wrote the novel Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan, a book that tells the story of a fictional ship whose sinking resembles very similarities with the events that happened in 1912. Number 8. Prohibition. We know a bit about Prohibition, the time where booze was considered illegal. This occurrence took place during the 1920s till the early 1930s, so roughly 10 years of being told to stay sober, which doesn't seem too bad. But for the folks who love a good ale in the evening, they didn't like the thought whatsoever. The reason Prohibition started was prior to the ratification of the 18th Amendment, which the US Congress passed the Temporary Wartime Prohibition Act, which banned the sales of alcoholic content greater than 1.28%. This was so they could save grain for the war effort in World War I. But once the war ended, the US Senate proposed the act in 1919 and the country went dry a year later. Prohibition turned out to be a success in reducing liquor consumption, death rates, admission to state mental hospitals for alcoholic psychosis, and crime rate decreased quite a bit. However, that didn't stop people from wanting their drink. By 1925, there was over 30,000 to 100,000 speakeasies all over New York City alone. So then in 1926, the federal government funded and enforced the so-called Noble Experiment, which mandated adding poison, including methanol, to industrial alcohol as a way to discourage people from drinking. So then they released these barrels of alcohol that they had poisoned to make people sick. That's pretty messed up. Still, the people endured and they were able to get their alcohol back in 1933 when President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Cullen-Harrison Act, allowing beer and wine back on the shelves. Number 7. The $6 Million Man. The 1970s was a pretty interesting time in history, from the Vietnam War, Watergate, equal rights for women, and minorities, technology, fashion, and entertainment, all flourishing heavily at this time. And one time in Long Beach, California, a film crew was filming an episode of The $6 Million Man, an American science fiction and action television series that ran from 1973 to 1978. As they were shooting at an amusement park funhouse location, a stagehand was moving what he thought was a prop wax figure on a noose. As he tried to take the prop wax figure down, the figure's one arm fell off, revealing human flesh and bone underneath. After an autopsy, it was revealed to be Elmer J. McCurdy, an American bank and train robber who was killed in a shootout with the police after robbing a Katy train in Oklahoma in 1911. Dubbed as the bandit who wouldn't give up, his mummified body was actually on display in an Oklahoma funeral home and then became a fixture for a traveling carnival during the 1920s through the 1960s. The ownership changed frequently till his remains would end up at the Pike, the amusement park where they filmed The $6 Million Man. The police were called that day, and through the autopsy, his body was completely petrified, covered in wave, and had been covered with layers of phosphorus paint. Some of his hair was still visible on the sides and the back of his head, while his ears, big toes, and fingers were missing. While observing his body, they noticed incisions from the original autopsy, which would then test to show positive for arsenic, which they would have used as a form of embalming fluid at the time. On April 22, 1977, a funeral was conducted for Elmer as he would finally lay to rest. But to make sure his body wouldn't get stolen, they actually had to pour 2 feet of concrete over his casket. Number 6. William McKinley's Red Carnation. Flowers hold a lot of meanings, from sunflowers representing unwavering faith as they are associated with positivity and happiness, chrysanthemums meaning happiness and friendship, and carnations represent distinction and love. Colors in flowers also hold meanings as well. For William McKinley, a red carnation doesn't just mean deep love and affection. To him, it was his ultimate good luck charm. Early in his political career, his opponent gave him a red carnation boutonniere to wear during the debate, which he eventually won and continued a string of good luck of winning of congressional elections where he served in the Ohio House of Representatives for 14 years. He saw this red carnation as his good luck charm, as he would wear one during all the election cycles and win every time. Even in his 1896 presidential campaign, he won, and after he would win, he would wear the carnation on his lapel at all times. He even kept a bouquet on them on his desk at the Oval Office and plucked them to gift to visitors. Aw, so nice. But during the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, he met a 12-year-old girl named Myrtle Ledger, who was there with her mother. His words to her was, "I must give this flower to another little flower," and he gave away his lucky carnation. Literally minutes later, McKinley was shot twice by his assassin and died the following week. The Ohio General Assembly named the scarlet carnation the official state flower in his honor. Number 5. Debbie Reynolds. Hollywood isn't shy from scandals or dirty secrets passed around the bend. From multiple marriages and divorces to sketchy behind-the-curtain secrets that are probably 100% illegal and inhumane. For Debbie Reynolds, she was once a beloved and still is a beloved actress, but unfortunately this glamorous star was one of many who dealt with the horrors of set misbehaviors, emotional and physical injury, and all kinds of psychological damages, especially by her co-star Gene Kelly on the set of Singing in the Rain. She writes in her 2013 memoir, Unsinkable, that how her professional co-star didn't want her in Singing in the Rain at all. The co-founder of MGM chose her to play Kathy, and so Gene couldn't do anything about it. But what he did do to Debbie was just absolutely unprofessional and disgusting. Not only would he come to rehearsals criticizing everything she did, nor give her any sense of security of encouragement, he was also a severe taskmaster, according to Debbie. She even noticed scenes where they would have to kiss or be intimate felt extremely invasive and a violation. Considering Gene Kelly was 20 years older to the back then 18-year-old Debbie Reynolds, he must have been extremely intimidating to work with, let alone kind of gross to say the least. Debbie worked so hard on set that on one scene, the famous Good Morning dance number, that her shoes end up being soaked in blood. She was forced by doctors to be on bed rest for 2 days. With no dance experience as much as her co-stars, Debbie revered as one of the best. Still, as horrifying as it was, Debbie didn't hold anything against the actor after they spoke in the early 1970s. She still notes that he made her a star, how at 18 he taught her early on how to dance, how to work really hard, and how to be dedicated. She also writes in her memoir, quote, "Gene came to visit me on my first time on Broadway, and after the show backstage, he hugged me, told me how proud he was of me, and kissed me, with no tongue this time, and I was so moved and I cried," end quote. Additionally, Kelly later reflected and admitted he wasn't very nice to Debbie on Singing on the Rain, and he was still surprised that she still spoke to him. Not all Hollywood stories seemingly have a good relationship with co-stars, as it is tedious and meticulous place to thrive in, but by golly did those who survived and endured. Number 4. Harriet Tubman and her chickens. Harriet Tubman is best known today as a brave freedom fighter and abolitionist who fought against slavery in the United States. With the help of her abolitionist friends in the North, she also self-funded her heroic raids through her favorite and incredible skill, cooking. And as an undercover agent helping escaped enslaved people, she was also known to carry chickens with her. Once after buying 2 chickens at a market, she almost came face to face with a former slave owner, so she quickly released one of the chickens she was carrying and pretending to chase it, creating a large commotion that allowed her to slip away unnoticed, even though ironically everyone's eyes were on her. She used every tactic if it means looking normal in everyone else's eyes, and these tactics work. Even reading a newspaper as enslaved individuals, she even went as far as reading a newspaper as enslaved individuals would typically not be able to know how to read. Number 3. Mozart and his weird obsessions. Pirating music is illegal, as it steals the creativity and dedication of musicians. But did you know, in 1630, there was only one song played in the Sistine Chapel. The Vatican kept the composition of Miserere Mei Deus a secret and refused anyone to play it. Until 150 years later, roughly in 1771, a young 14-year-old came waltzing in, heard the piece, and described the whole thing by memory, and then also produced it. That musical genius was Mozart, and it was actually considered the first time pirated music was a thing. Mozart is also known as a famous musician from composing great famous works like the Requiem, Piano Sonata in a K3 third movement, and the Magic Flute, and so many more. But as he was obsessed with gambling, as he was with procrastinating and writing music, he was one of those guys. He wrote the Requiem in the morning in like 20 minutes. He was known as a prankster and a bit of an annoying guy to some, but he was nonetheless a genius. But he was also obsessed with butts. Yes, he just loved butts. If he heard that song by Sir Mix-a-Lot, he would definitely ask for a collaboration. He went as far as writing a song called Lick Me im Arsch, which I'm pretty sure you can guess is in translation, Lick Me in the Arse. And if you can imagine 30 school choir students singing this song, it seemed pretty funny to Mozart, despite it sounding very heavenly. Number 2. North Korean's movie star. Everyone loves a good movie, and in 1978, a film buff and future North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il decided he wanted to make a really good movie. His goal was to gain global recognition for North Korea's film industry since he himself was frustrated with his own films he made in the early 70s. He could tell that in contrast to other world-renowned films, his was pretty much stiff and lifeless, so he went ahead and kidnapped South Korean actor Choi Eun-hee during her time in Hong Kong. She was taken to Nampo Harbor, North Korea on January 22, 1978 and was housed in a luxury villa. She was toured around the city and then later given a private tutor who instructed her the life and achievements of Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung took her to the movies, operas, musicals, and parties, as well as asked her on her opinions on various films and respected her perspective. She had no idea, however, that she was also used as bait for her ex-husband, director Shin Sang-ok, 5 years later after her capture. Once she disappeared, Shin Sang-ok began looking for her in Hong Kong when he was also kidnapped. Not initially aware of the situation, he was finally reunited with his ex-wife at a party Kim Jong-il hosted. He kept him in North Korea for 8 years, forcing them to make movies including his own version of Godzilla, Pulgasari. The pair would finally be able to escape in 1986 during a press conference in Vienna under the protection of the US Embassy. Following their escape, Shin lived in the US working in the film industry before returning home to South Korea. North Korea denies any part of the kidnap and claims the two openly and willingly defected to North Korea on their own. Number 1. Major Henry Rathbone. A bit of a somber note, but the day that President Lincoln was assassinated, it shook the United States as much as it has traumatized those who were with him. See, the president attended the play Our American Cousin with 2 other patrons, Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée Clara Harris. After Booth fired the shot, Rathbone tried to tackle him to the ground, but Booth was able to get free after slicing Rathbone in the arm with a dagger. Rathbone was never be able to let himself down of the events that occurred that evening, so much so that the memory and guilt overwhelmed him and feeling like he was personally responsible for letting Booth get away. In the years to come, he experienced a myriad of health issues from stomach ailments to heart palpitations. The stress was so extreme to the point where his mental health and mental state deteriorated. Sadly, on December 23, 1883, roughly 18 years after the assassination, he attacked and killed his now wife, Clara, and attempted to do the same to himself. He would then spend the rest of his life in a mental institution. Well, that's all I got for you for today, and I appreciate you for sticking around. Oh, also here's your riddle. Ready? What do you call a 5-letter word typed in all capital letters that can be read the same upside down? Comment below what your answer is. The answer will be in my next video. Top 10 historical locations in America that is haunted. No cheating. Actually, I don't know if you did cheat. This is a pre-recorded video. Anyways, my name is Jessa. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see your beautiful faces in the next one. Bye-bye!